push drugs to keep us all dumbed down and hope that they will never see the truth around. Another promise, another scene, another package lie to keep us trapped in greed. Another green bells wrapped around our minds, and endless red tape to keep the truth confined. They will not force us. They will stop degrading us. They will not control us. We will be victorious.
Hello, everybody. So sorry about the delay. We have some kind of like sleet storm, something or other, and my pewter ain't having it. So sorry about that, Matt. Dash, thanks for joining. That's exciting. Um, where is Miguel? Miguel is always first. Where is he? And I can't see who else is in here. Holly, thanks so much for joining. You guys, if you're joining, please smash like and subscribe. So tonight we have a special show, two special guests who I care about deeply, who are wonderful people. As you guys know, exactly. As you guys know, I talk a lot about my friend Temujin Kensu, who is in Michigan serving his 38th year of a life sentence despite being proven innocent. Paula is his incredible wife and number one badass supporter and advocate. And Aaron is one of the co hosts of Generation Y, which is basically the OG of true crime podcast that started in 2012. So thanks for coming, Aaron. I've had Paula a lot, but thanks for joining tonight, Aaron.
No, glad to be here with both of you.
So, Aaron actually got to visit the prison, got to visit Temujin in prison the day after I did. And we've talked a little since then, but we haven't talked about what your experience was like. So, have you ever been in a prison before?
Yes, actually, I had in Leavenworth, Kansas, actually, and that was some years ago. But yes, I went to visit a prisoner there who I was following the case and covering the case. And so I wanted to visit with a guy who I felt had gotten a raw deal. And so I know, at least from that one visit, I had an idea that those who are incarcerated, say what you want about conviction, guilt, innocence, whatever, they really appreciate having someone visit them, communicate with them, because the life they're living inside those walls is not like the one we have, and so there are a lot of things that happen that they don't really have much control over, and all they can control is how they react to it, how they govern themselves.
Absolutely. So, what was your reaction when you finally got to see the man, the myth, the legend in person?
Yeah, no, I think in all the time I've been covering stories and watching videos, interviews, meeting with people, Temujin is easily one of the most well-spoken people you'll ever meet who's in his position. It's pretty fascinating um, that someone in his position is has got the mind like what he does. His ability to put together his own case, I know that's something that happens frequently with people who are working to free themselves and with others. But Temujin he's an ace. You have any questions for him? He knows the names, he knows the dates. Um, the funniest thing about him, though, what I would say is he always wants to know what he can do for you.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I remember the first time he came on my show was almost 5 years ago. And for those who are tuning in for the first time, I'm 85% blind. And I told him about that because he came on my show, and I'm always like, sorry, I can't read the comments, things like that. And after the show, I want to say it was like 3 days after the show, he called me from prison and he's like, hi, Joy, I'm just checking in on your health. And I was like, what? Like, you're literally serving a life sentence for a crime you didn't commit, and you are calling me, who you barely know. And I was like, yeah, I'm fighting for this guy. And like, he's wonderful. And when I first, talked to him, I knew a little about the case, but once I talked to him like 15 minutes, I'm like, we have to get this guy out. Like, it's not just because of who he is as a person, but this case is insane. When you went to see him, what are some of the things you talked about? Did you talk about the case?
Well, I knew I was going to end up talking about his case with him. I had some questions for him because honestly, when you go through the whole case, there are things that come up and you say, what was all this about? You know? And he always has an answer. Um, Sometimes he's reflective and thinks on it. I honestly think he thinks, when I've talked to him too often, he'll say, I think back then my behavior didn't help. And, as a true crime podcaster, we say all the time, do not blame the victim. Do not blame the victim. And so, I think it's just him as part of his journey, with changing his name from Frederick Freeman to Temujin Kensu. He's really taken this time because he has a lot of time on his hands. He's worked to better himself. And we talk all the time. What's reform? What does that mean? Well, it really starts with the person inside. And so Temujin's managed to do that. I think that's, if you ask, why is his name Temujin Kensu? He looks like a martial arts guy in the movies in the mid 80s, But no, seriously, you can tell he's worked on every aspect of his life to be a better person. If we can get him out, which is all our goal, then we would see a person being released into society who can contribute, help other people, just be a light for everybody, really. But I would say the other thing I wanted to do though was I thought, man, he's behind these walls all the time. So let's talk about things that are not his case. So one of my favorite things that I've been looking up lately is martial arts, and of course, Temujin, that's one of his passions. I know if he was out, he would be training all the time. And so I had so many questions for him in that regard. And so we talked about different actors, different martial arts, and what he used to do and what he really likes about it, how it's improved his life.
Absolutely. I was so happy to be able to do that as well because I got over 4 hours. And, I've probably interviewed him, what, 2 dozen times, and we talk on the phone all the time as well. But I never talked to him about his childhood, his hobbies, things like that. And it was so great to be able to just talk to him about all those things, like who you grew up with, what you like to do. He talked a lot, and it's something with an E. Paula, you may know, it's Japanese wood cutting. He really loved doing it, and he used to be able to do it in prison, and they took it away. And he just went on and on about how good he was and how much he loved it. So I found coloring books online of that exact thing, and I sent them to him, and they wouldn't let him have the colored pencils. And I kind of, yeah, that was typical yet very upsetting because it's like, hey, you can't have that anymore. I'm going to give you the next best thing. Oh, wait, but, sorry. But he understood where I was coming from. But, I'd never even heard of what that was, and I learned so much about him and even stuff about the case I did not know, because when he comes on my show for an hour or two, how much can you talk about? You have to be presumptuous. There's going to be people in the comments who don't know this case. So you're going to have to start from scratch. When, who, what, when, where, why, like those things. Um, Paula, what, what's new in the case? I know some of this stuff and we can't really talk about it, but what's going on currently that you can share?
Well, there's a lot of media buzz. As you both know, there was a big event last month in Michigan here. And we have some new podcasts coming up. Contacted almost at least once a week, I'd say, by a new podcaster asking if they can tell this story. So that's really exciting to have more and more interest. Was reached by a journalist last week, somebody who is undergrad student from UC Davis. So, a lot of media coverage, and a lot of people are really just asking the same question that we've been asking for the last 4 years. Why is Temujin Kensu still in prison? With all the media coverage that we have around this case, it's mind-boggling that the Conviction Integrity Unit didn't release him. We know that they wrote a report recommending that they set aside the conviction and that he be released. And that did not happen. They instead threw another technicality. And when I say they, I mean Dana Nessel, the Michigan Attorney General. The clemency application is still pending with Governor Whitmer, so we cannot submit anything in the Supreme Court. Even though we do have new evidence, we can't submit a new appeal while that clemency is pending, because then it'll just be an excuse for her to, deny him.
What about another habeas? Because I know he has, succeeded one of the times doing it himself, which is just mind-blowing. But knowing him, he literally is the most genius person I've ever met and has an eidetic memory. So it definitely helps. But he's won 2 habeases. So can we do another one? Or is it because the clemency is pending?
The clemency is pending, but it also takes like 7 years to push through something in the Michigan Supreme Court. With his illness and things that he's got going on health-wise, I mean, he doesn't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
So right now we feel like our best bet is to really put pressure on Governor Whitmer to do the right thing.
What do you think it's going to take? I mean, thousands of us have sent emails, phone calls. What's
it's really hard. I think, Whitmer is looking at a 2028 presidential run. That's really no secret. I think that it's going to take possibly this new administration taking a look at what's been happening here in Michigan. To me, it's a crime. It's a crime what they've done to him, that they've left him in prison. They know he's innocent. So possibly reaching out to the new AG, Pam Bondi, and the Department of Justice, and more media, more attention. Every time Governor Whitmer posts something on social media, ask her about Temujin Kensu. Why is that guy still in prison? What are you doing about it? Because the more people that see that, and the more, I don't think writing to her directly is gonna go anywhere. I think it needs to be a public outcry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should also do something where we do videos talking to her directly, instead of just emails. She has her people just delete them. Maybe if we just do videos, like, I'm addressing you, Governor Whitmer, why are you doing this? And then just playing the videos. I'll put them on here. I'll put them on TikTok, whatever. I mean, I'm not sure what else to do, but
It's a good idea.
I know one thing. If you run for president, I'm going to make it known who you are. I'm just telling her that because I know she watches my show. So, I'm just telling her just so she has a heads up. Aaron, what do you think it's going to take to get Whitmer to actually give a fuck?
Yeah, I really think that in cases like this where it seems almost illogical as to why there hasn't been a change or hasn't been a release. It takes enormous pressure. And I do believe that can be brought to bear just by the right individual. There could be the right individual who comes on board to help. Um, as we know, it's not really who you know, it's who knows you. There might be
Yeah.
someone that she's closer to, who maybe she'd have more trouble denying. If they were to speak to her, she might be able to reach that place where she can make the right decision. I say right decision because anybody that's looked into this case can see all the ways in which this has been a travesty. I mean, say what you will about the victim not getting true justice, but what's been done to Temujin over all these years, um, this isn't right. It really bothers me the fact that we've seen over the last so many years other people released from Michigan prisons who, frankly, I mean, if we were to get the details of what they did, yeah, it would horrify people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things I talk to Temujin about a lot. Like, he's been in 38 years of his life sentence. Now, for those who don't know, Scott Macklem is a college kid. He was shot one time in the side, November 5th, 1986. Temujin was almost 500 miles away. He has over a dozen witnesses proving so. Nine are unimpeachable who testified at trial. Um, so with all this, like cut and dry, obviously it's not him, but it goes so much deeper than that. And the case is maddening. It is absolutely maddening. And the one of the biggest issues is the corruption goes so freaking deep through so many people, and that's the reason he hasn't yet been let out, because there's going to have to be ramifications for these people, even if it's only socially, like on social media, or it ruins their political career for the rest of their lives. These people don't have empathy, they don't have compassion, they don't actually know the meaning of justice. Paula, if Temujin got out today, do you think that is justice, or do you think it's kind of some semblance of justice?
I mean, he just needs to come home immediately. I no, I mean, but we want him home. So, I mean, he's not going to squabble. He's just going to hit the ground running. He is going to live life fast and furious and, try and make up for everything that he's lost out on all these years. And he's going to be grateful for every moment that he's home free and, not in that horrible place. So, I mean, we trust that everything happens in its time. And, it's not our timing, obviously. It's not what we want, but, everything happens for a reason. We might not understand it. We just want him home. So,
Aaron, you said the word reform. Do you think that the prison industrial complex, that it can be reformed?
Well, the problem is I just don't see or hear any evidence that the people that run the country, the politicians, have any interest in doing that, in reforming prisons. We've it's really difficult for people to shake the ideas, the concepts, the traditions of the country that they've lived under. So when you say we're going to let prisoners out, some prisoners might actually just have to pay back what they owe to people they've robbed, et cetera. People are
Right.
like, no, that's not what you do. We just have to take them and put them behind bars. That's what we do. I would think that over time we would learn that we should study prisons. We should study prisons from around the world because, hate to say it, but maybe Norway does it better.
Yeah.
I just want effectiveness, and I want something that isn't so concrete where justice cannot be achieved. I want to talk about a couple of things you mentioned. I mean, you talk about if Temujin gets let out, is that justice? Well, that's not necessarily justice, I think, but he still owed things. And
Yeah.
even if it's not full justice, if he were to be released, that would at least be giving him back something that he's owed, which is his freedom. And going back into further, like when we go to talk to people, we try to think of what are the most important things you can tell someone about Temujin's case once they understand the core concept or the core story here is that he would have had to have flown, like chartered a plane, flown from, Upper Peninsula down to St. Clair County, and then he'd have to have a car basically waiting there. This is a guy who couldn't afford to fix his car that, it wouldn't have cost much to fix. But again, where does he get the money to do all this? They've already had people that were involved in the airport in question saying this is impossible. That did not happen, you know? And so we just need people to use their common sense here and say, why did they go after Temujin? I find it also interesting that they've painted him as this ninja assassin. And look, Temujin's probably very good at martial arts, but to call him a ninja assassin and say, yeah, this guy with the poison darts in his shoes, yeah, he shot someone with a shotgun and killed them.
Right.
It just, there are a lot of problems with this case. And I'm frankly frustrated by how many people who are in power look at this and go, yeah, I'm going to go for a coffee now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm for those who don't know, I'm writing a book. It comes out next month, and it's up for pre-order. book.temujinkensu.com. Matt, if you could throw that link in the comments. I'm editing the book and I'm at the plane part. And one thing that I was just, writing about is by them saying that he had to hire a plane, that means they're acknowledging he was almost 500 miles away. Like they inadvertently just admitted he wasn't there, but it's so hard because I read through these things and I'm like, holy shit, this jury was dumb as fuck. But then I realized that was before a true crime podcast. That was before people knew how to really be analytical about, statements, prosecution, evidence. They're going by what they're seeing and nothing more. And it's hard to kind of step back and be like, wait, there wasn't internet then, there wasn't cell phone then. We have to kind of think about it from that in that respect. And it's hard to remove ourselves and actually take that step back. Paula, what one of the things I didn't know that I found out when I was meeting with him is how you guys met. And your first meeting, I did not know that. It's so cute. Erin, you may not know.
Oh,
Share it.
So we met in prison. I had written to him for multiple times. And it was right before COVID hit. We had conversed back and forth multiple times in the JPay tablet, that's like an email system. So we had written back and forth, and I wanted to meet him because I drove right by his prison twice a week. And so I was like, let me just, swing in and see you. And he's like, okay, but, I filled out the visiting application. It took forever to get approved. And then when I was finally approved, I wanted to come and see him, and I was ready. I was like so excited. And I'm trying to remember. I think I might have even actually scheduled the visit. And he said, no, you can't come and see me on this date. And I'm like, why? And he said that he was out in the weight pit. And he had gotten sunburned. He was just beet red. So he canceled our first date, like our very first date. He canceled. He wouldn't see me because he was sunburned. He said he looked like a lobster. And I'm like, really? And then I'm like, I was getting all self-confident, and I'm like, is it me? Like, really? I'm like, is this for real? And it was kind of funny, but and for somebody now, I know he hates the sun, and but he was outside in the yard. It was ice cold outside, and in the sun was reflecting off the snow or whatever. It was February. So he was beet red, but yeah, that was pretty funny. And then the following week, I ended up seeing him the following week, and he was still very red. So, but yeah, we met in prison in the Macomb facility, and it was very special. He was very vulnerable. I don't know how long it had been since he had a visitor prior to me visiting him on that day. I think it had been quite some time, and I mean, like a personal visit. He had a reporter, Nolan Finley, had come in and visited him at Christmas time. But it was, he had a lot to say, and he got very emotional during our talk. And, he was talking, basically, he was telling me about all of the people that he lost throughout the years. And he was talking about Tetchin and this great guy that came to visit him and was literally dying and got on a bicycle and rode to see him. And he had passed away, and he, just missed his friend. And it was just sad, because these are people that fought for him throughout the years. And it's one of the reasons why I, reached out to him to begin with, is I read in the article that he had lost his wife 7 years prior. And I thought, my God, and he had been with her, Amiko, for 22 years. And, I just thought, how horrible to have somebody fight for you for 22 years and to lose that person, and then to be in prison of all places, and just to be alone and to lose somebody in prison. And it was really powerful. It was a really, it was a special visit. And, how it is when you meet him and when you talk to him, and, some of that emotion pours out, and just the whole ambience of a prison room, and how cold and just horrible it is inside, that you can tell, you can just tell how you're being treated, and he's being treated worse. And then to hear what he has gone through, and to know that he's innocent, it's powerful. It's powerful.
Well,
And if
Joy
it doesn't,
knows that, because she had told me when they told her it was time to go, that was really hard on you, wasn't it, Joy?
Oh God. I lost it. Why did you see my YouTube video? I freaking lost it. I was like, I get to leave, and he is staring at me from behind as I walk away. Like, I don't know how you, like, I don't know. I don't know, and like how you do it. I mean, you're, I don't want to say fortunate, but you do get to see him, more than I do. I don't know when I can go back out, and hopefully it's to have a freaking party, but just the thought of just, I was one of 3 visitors that day, and then you got to go the next day, and then Jack interviewed him that night. So he had all these things going on, which was so exciting, but I just kept thinking, holy shit, all of us are leaving though. And he has to stay there. Like,
No.
I'm going to start crying just thinking about it. It's so awful. And the fact that he's innocent is just makes it a million times worse. I can't imagine having to say goodbye to him so often. And but what I was getting at that you seem to have left out is that he told me he proposed to you the first time you met.
everybody, I don't want people to think I'm crazy, Joy. Thanks.
Oh, sorry. No way. I was like, oh my God, that's so freaking cute. Like, dude, I met my husband on MySpace. I don't care. Like, I mean, like, whatever. But no, I mean, you had that connection. It was,
Well,
the
yes,
way
he
talks
did.
about
He did.
you is, he's so in love with you, and it's just amazing. Like, he thinks you walk on water. He really does. And it's wonderful. It's beautiful. I'm like 12. I'm like, God, it's so cute. But yeah, when you told me that, I was just like, oh, that's so sweet. Like he knew when he met you. He was like, I knew. But we talked a lot about
Yeah, he knew.
Amiko,
And I knew he was going to ask. So I knew he was
yeah,
going to ask. Yeah.
we
I
did
knew he was
talk a
going to
lot
ask, and
about
I knew I had to have
Amiko.
an answer.
Yeah, that's
He did. Yeah.
amazing. We talked a lot about Amiko, and he, you know, we all know him. I mean, I'm sure you know him more intimately as far as, you know, being able to speak with him when he's, you know, having his ups and downs. And, you know, when I talk to him, at least he's usually happy because we're talking, and, you know, it's like the whole visitor thing. But when he was talking about Amiko, you know, he was talking about how when he lost her, like he was actually like hoping he died and stuff. And I was just like, I couldn't wrap my head around that because he's so positive and he's so like full of life. And it was heartbreaking, but at the same time it reminds you that he's human and people can only take so much. And it's just, I can't imagine everything he's going through. So, yeah, I mean, I treasure those conversations we had that day because I learned so much about him. Aaron, was there anything else that he told you that you didn't know and learned that day?
Um, I mean, little things, but I mean, mostly I just really wanted to focus on letting him tell me about his interests. So I asked him a lot of questions about Japan, Japanese culture, because I know that's a big thing for him. And I can see what's interesting about it too. So we spent a lot of time talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is I told him,
Movies.
I said, I don't know how or when, but you need to watch Godzilla -1 because it is so much not about Godzilla so much, but it's about Japanese culture and their way of life, and especially in World War II, where if you return from the war alive, then you failed. And so, getting past those ideas and working towards a better way of life, which is the message of the movie, despite all the hurdles. Man, there were many hurdles in the movie for these people, but I just told them, if you're into Japanese culture, watch that movie. It's in Japanese, and the director takes on the paradigm and the way of things back in World War II and says, like, this isn't right. You know, how can we live better? How can we fight better? And so, to me, the movie is, I mean, it affected me very, very much so. And I know it might affect many more people, but they don't watch it because it says it's Godzilla. And I know that's kind of a hurdle for people, but no, it's just really spending time letting him kind of get animated and talk about things that he wants to talk about. If you let him, he'll talk about his case for 12 hours straight.
Yeah.
But I think he does welcome the other conversations, and especially when he gets to help you in some way, whether he thinks it's through advice or trying to lift you up. He's very good at trying to make you laugh. It's almost like he can tell when things are getting a little rough with the conversations, and he doesn't want anyone leaving feeling like, "Hey, this is depressing." It always feels like to me that Temujin wants you to walk away feeling hope and
Mhm.
feeling better for the conversation that you had with him. I think he really treasures his friendships and any kind of relationships he has. And if given the chance, he would have great relationships with everybody he's come across. But as we know in life, there are some people whose job it is to not be nice to the person they deal with every day. It's to keep them in line or keep them under their fingers. So I think, again, if he were out, this would be a guy so many more people get to know and appreciate.
Absolutely. Does Paul, I know he was telling me sometimes he thinks about going like on tour, so to speak, and like sharing his stories. He wants to go to Australia to see Jack and stuff like that, just to share his case and try to inspire other people. Have you talked about like what you're gonna do? Are you like honestly, I think you should just chill at the house for like 6 months and just like watch TV in bed and like watch films
That's
and
what
stuff.
I want to do. I want to chill, but I know,
He's gonna be like,
yeah,
let's
yeah. I
go.
mean, I really want to just exactly. He is. I want to be like, let's decompress. He's going to be like, let's throw the dogs in a vehicle and go for a ride to Ohio and say hi to all of those great students that wrote letters for
Right,
me.
right.
And he's going to want to travel. He's not going to want to sit. He'll sit for a little bit, but he's going to want to run around. I know.
Yeah,
So
no matter how well
we'll figure it
adjusted
all
you
out.
might
It'll,
think he's going to be,
it'll,
it would still be a lot. I'm with you, Paula. As much as you could do it, you'd have to let him ease into things.
Yeah.
I want to.
Yeah,
Heck,
it's
a
gonna
lot of
be a
people are like, we
lot.
can all go visit him. We can just have another meetup. Just
Yeah.
he'll be there. That would be the great thing.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. You're in a cage for almost 40 years, and now you're coming out. There's all these things electronically. The world looks completely different. You need to learn how to drive again and, just everything. It would be new, like you're born as an adult, really. It's it would be a culture shock for sure. Is that something you guys talk about?
I talk about it with Dash all the time. So for those of you that don't know, Dash moved in with me here. He is he's in a chat. He is one of Temujin's alibi witnesses and one of his good friends that, from back in the 80s that was in the Upper Peninsula with Temujin on the day of the murder. And so I talk with Dash about it all the time. We talk about like the microwave or the key fob and how, all of these different things that he is just not used to and that he's not, doesn't have life experience with, and so yeah, we talk about it. I've had a couple ideas of how I'm going to trick him and play games with him when he comes home. He's telling me that he gets to control the radio and because he likes rock and roll and I like country. So I have this trick I want to play on him when we're driving home for the first time. I know he's going to be trying to mess with my radio and change the station to rock, and he doesn't know that there's buttons on the back side of the steering wheel that's going to change it back to my station. So there's little things like that I'm excited to like just play games with him.
Broken radio.
He's not going to know.
No,
Oh my God.
when I talked with him, I did ask him about Dash because, Dash was at the meetup and it's so obvious. He told me how important Dash is to him, how much he loves
Yeah.
him. So it was, again, when you talk to him, you're just getting the stories. And he's not even out yet. And he's got all these people that he feels he owes so much to because they've just been there for him the whole time. And he'll never forget that.
Yeah. Well, let's go to Aaron first. As someone who's done this for 13 years, the podcast in a true crime realm, what are some of the things, this is a really freaking broad question, but what are some of the things overall that you want to change about the system?
Well, I think it really starts with philosophy. I mean, for me, a big part of my philosophy is I don't think we should just throw people away. Now there are exceptions. There are some people who are so dangerous, who have committed so much havoc, destroyed so many lives that some of those people you can't really take chances on. But even for years, people have said, if you're in for a nonviolent offense, why do we have to keep you locked up for 8 years? This system that we have in this country incarcerates people at a rate and at a number that per capita is ridiculous. It doesn't even feel feasible. Of course, their answer was to turn it into a business. But I mean, for me, I just think, how can we get more out of people? A lot of these people, I would assume, based on my reading and understanding, a lot of them didn't have the support they needed. They didn't have a shirt on their back. And a lot of times we're just trying to punish people for getting the short end of the stick. And that's not to excuse anything, but it's just like anything else. If we're having a hard time, if we're having depression, we can go see a therapist. If we have an imbalance, we can get a drug, whatever it is, prescribed to us. But it seems like when it comes to criminal justice, we're just too quick to say, well, you broke the law, now you get punished. And I don't know how you improve anybody doing that. Anybody who's improved coming out of prison, I would say it's mostly because they took the initiative somehow. They found some inspiration. Maybe they met the right person behind bars. I don't know. But then they work on themselves and then they can become a better person. But most people, they already had a bad shake before. When they get out, it's just that much worse because now they're not employable, at least by anybody legitimate. And they're being sent out into the world basically ready to break the law again, because where else are they going to turn to? So in cases like this with Temujin, and we've seen other cases where people have been released and they've actually been exonerated, it's proof that the system is not perfect. And if you have so many people saying the same thing and you have a report and we have verifiable information, it's not I think this. It's gotten to the point of, okay, this person shouldn't be behind bars. And Joy, I know for like your book, when I was going to send something into you, my inspiration is because I'm such a movie fan. I think about all those movies where they have a gotcha moment. Oh, we have them on video. Oh, you can hear them giving the order, So now we know the truth. Well, guess what? The truth doesn't set you free anymore. It's
No.
almost like the truth is not convenient. And as long as enough people don't care, we can ignore it. But I want us to get back to that, because one of the things that is fair is when we know something to be absolutely true and it's not based on opinion. We actually have it on video, or we have enough evidence to say this is not possible. So I want us to get to that point where we can start to trust the collection of evidence and be brave enough to say, I want a review of that. I don't care about the ego of the prosecutor. I don't care about the ego of the person who doesn't like the person who was convicted. I just want the truth to come out, and that should set someone free.
Absolutely. What about you, Paula?
Oh gosh, I can't give a better answer than Aaron just gave. That was incredible. He hit every single nail on the head there. There is a lot that needs to be reformed within the prison system. For the people that are in there, that are stuck in there, innocent or guilty, there's no medical care. That's a really big problem. They are, retaliated against in terms of the staff. I think, there could be a lot of improvements there. The entire clemency parole board process makes no sense. You have to admit guilt in order to, be approved by the parole board. I think that's just a loophole. It's for somebody innocent like Temujin. You're not going to admit, you're not going to express remorse for something that you didn't do. There's there's so many people. I think he mentioned that, and I agree that, the crime doesn't fit the punishment doesn't fit the crime for some of these cases, or they're very inequitable. Somebody who, like Temujin, and shot one grown man in the
allegedly
side one time and is serving life without parole, versus somebody, right, allegedly, right, versus somebody who raped, murdered a woman and her children were watching, or something like that, and then they only get 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or whatever it is.
That's what I alluded to earlier.
So, there's a lot that can be done. And I think holding our elected officials accountable for these changes, I think that's where we need to really press. I think everybody should care about these issues too. You don't have to care about Temujin, but my gosh, anybody can be wrongfully convicted, and it's a scary thing, and it takes away your whole entire life, and it impacts families, communities. It's a living nightmare.
I've had people ask me, actually, how many people do you think are wrongfully convicted? And I say, what if it's just 1% or 0.5%? That's still a great
Yeah.
number of people. Imagine being in that position. Once you're convicted, now you're fighting an uphill battle because there is no presumption of innocence. I mean, we could we could probably argue whether that ever exists, but once you're convicted, I mean, you can win an appeal and a higher court will just go, well, we're going to kick it back down because we're not going to go against that lower court. It happens all the time.
Yeah. I'll never forget my sociology professor in college. I wrote this paper on the death penalty and how, people have been killed for, and they end up being innocent. And at that time, it was 23 people. And my professor literally said, that's not even that many. And I was like, what the actual fuck? They all have families. Like, this is their lives. What are you talking about? Like, it it was fucking mind-blowing to me. And I didn't know anyone in prison or anything. I'm not like, so many people in our country just don't care unless it affects them personally. Um, but for-profit prisons, that's definitely one of the freaking issues. You have someone like Sandra Bland who dies because they can't afford $250 for bail. One of the things Jack Lawrence and I were talking about on my show, he's from 1 Minute Remaining. For those who don't know, definitely subscribe. He's wonderful. One of the things we were talking about is jury duty. Um, when you have these juries, so often it's they're expected to do this around a holiday. You give them like 5-10 bucks. you know they don't want to be there. They don't. And if they're holding out and everyone else is like, just come on, just we want to go home, let's do this, there's no incentive for them to stay and want to actually do the just thing. They want to leave. So Jack and I were talking about like paying people to be on the jury, like actually paying them, like not just 5-10 bucks, but paying them for doing that as a job, and seeing if they took it more seriously. Then I think it's a good idea. What do you guys think? Do you think it would make a difference?
There needs to be training for starters, or
Oh God, seriously.
I mean, the thing that bothers me is that police can lie. They can lie to you during an interrogation, but you can't lie to them. I mean, there's so many things, and I think that thankfully, true crime and shows like Aaron's Generation Y podcast, the Prosecutors podcast, Wrongful Conviction podcast, your podcast, Maggie's podcast, like all of these different amazing avenues to teach the general public. They're going there for true crime and to learn something crazy about something that happened to somebody else. But I'm hoping and praying that they take something from these cases, eyewitness misidentification, and just learning that these prosecutors, some of them are just malicious, and that it's a show, it's a story, and it's whoever tells the best story during the trial, that's who's going to win the case. And I'm hoping that people, hear Temujin's case and they take something from it, and they realize, I really need to put forth my analytical thinking here and really not just look at, the weapons that are laid on the table before me, but really look at the timeline and say, was this possible? Was this really possible? Because, the evidence just doesn't add up. It never did add up. It was a lot of misconduct is what convicted my husband.
And people
I've
need
gone
to
back so many times to look at the whole flight thing, because it just doesn't make sense. And how they approached it in court was obviously a desperate move because they didn't have a way to beat his alibi. And so they had to come up with some nonsense thing. And then think about the pilot they brought onto the stand. I mean, that's not that guy can't get up there and say that he flew Temujin. That's not even what happened. It's just, oh, now we're talking to this pilot over and over about all these questions, and he's giving all these answers, and it's almost like it influences the jury, even though there's no evidence
Absolutely.
there. So
Absolutely.
it's infuriating.
And I think a lot of people who haven't looked into things like this, there is this presumption that, my husband, he's editing my book, and he's like, well, this should be thrown out. Like, there's no way this can happen and without him being set free. And I'm like, Frank, like, it's literally happening. I'm telling you, the average person cannot compute that something can be that fucked up, that these people can get away with this much shit. Like, it's okay that your lawyer is on probation and a literal crackhead. You don't get a new trial. Like, he doesn't object to things that are blatantly illegal, still no new trial. Things like this. You read this and you're like, no, this wouldn't happen. But it does. And these people get away with it because they are infallible in the eyes of the law and in eyes of who they've donated to. The hubris is just insurmountable, and they get away with it, and that's the issue. We see, like you brought up, like Norway, Sweden, places like this, they have like a 1% recidivism rate. They do things like they have art classes, they have animals that the prisoners can take care of, things like this. This is so good for their mental health. This is good to make them be productive. It's good to encourage them because they want to get out now and they want to do things like this. Here, I interviewed a couple years ago 2 women whose husbands were in prison in California, and they hit me up to tell me, and they sent me the documentation. They hit me up to tell me that their husbands were being told that they were going to be given lesser sentences because they were firefighting the wildfires in California. Now, here's the issue. They actually added more sentence onto those 2 gentlemen's case because they were doing such a good job. And they sent me the before they started doing the firefighting and after the paperwork. They added 3 months onto the one guy and 5 months onto the other guy. They did not take anything off. They actually had to suffer more because they did a good job. Like, this shit happens. It's crazy, but it freaking happens. So what can we do besides, I mean, Aaron, I want to ask you this as well, because I talked about this in my book. I think a lot of people look at shows like yours as a form of entertainment, and it is. But it's also there to educate people and to get people to fight to change the system. So what would you say to your viewers to kind of activate them?
Well, it's tough for me. I know that you could classify it that way, but I mean, if you listen to the show versus other shows, we don't set up a lot of joking, and I mean, nothing against that kind of stuff. Everyone should be their honest self, but I mean, when I get into these things, I just get really serious. Um,
Yeah.
these are real lives, real consequences. And so for me, and I talk about this with Justin all the time, just over the phone or in person, we meet for lunch, but we talk all the time like, yeah, we could totally make the show way more entertaining. But, at the end of the day, we're still trying to approach this from um, our own points of view and talk about the things that we find important, whatever that is in each case. We call it the why of each case. And sometimes it's just, how was this person treated? We covered a woman who we totally believe she did the crime. There are a lot of people saying she's innocent. We think she's guilty, but we still will go through and show how her trial was not fair because of the things they said and the things they did to her. And, you know, so we like to split things apart. Some people think we're splitting hairs. If they're guilty, who cares what happens? I think it does matter. I think our conduct as a society, if we're going to wield this power and determine who goes and gets locked away and who gets free and all that, we should have a sense that we're doing things the right way, a fair way, a just way. And so whatever the case is that we're covering, you know, we tend to be pretty serious about it. And it's just because there are things we're going to get into that we feel are important.
Absolutely. Paula, or actually, while we're on Aaron, I can't believe it's been a freaking hour already. So Aaron, while we are on you, first of all, what do you want to leave the audience with? What do you want them to take away from this conversation?
I guess I want to leave people with the idea that there are innocent people who get convicted. Sometimes it's a perfect storm. Sometimes it's a frame job. It happens. And so I just want people to understand if it was you and you know you didn't do something, think about even just when you were a kid. If your parents accused you of something, that happened to me. I had a night where I was out with a friend till 4 in the morning, and I got back, and my parents are waiting for me. They used to let me stay out pretty late, but 4 was way over the line, and they really thought I'd been out drinking, and I hadn't been. I was like, smell my breath. Well, is there a way I can test and make sure I wasn't out drinking? But anyway, long story short is, if you've been accused of something that you didn't do, it makes you mad. If you've been accused of something you didn't do and you can be locked up for the rest of your life for it, how do you feel then? Because for the people that this happens to, they have two choices. They can either give up and become a worse person as a result, probably, or they can fight it and do the best they can to preserve their humanity. Our system does its best to grind you down. Not all of them. I mean, we have some prisons that are probably run better than others, but, you know, I just wish that we would start looking at how to improve everything. And I can't stress it enough. If we treated our prisoners better, gave them hobbies, gave them things to do, I know that sounds like you're rewarding them. You're not. We're going to improve the people that come out of there. We're going to teach them the benefit of having a better life. They're going to want that, you know? I mean, if you've ever seen the movie Scrooge, Bill Murray, watch
Yep.
that speech where he says, once they get a taste of that, they're going to want more of it, you know?
Yep.
What that is love and acceptance, you know? Things to do, things like they feel like they're a part of. I know it sounds like a hippie thing, but it's not. I am definitely not a hippie. I can tell you though, I want results. And I can tell you the system we have, not good results. We can do a lot better. Start with Temujin's case, look into it, read up on it, ask questions, listen to the podcasts, reach out to Paula. She can get you on an email list, no problem. You'll see the ins and outs of how this case went wrong, why it's still going wrong, and why we should write that.
Absolutely. And a good source is my book. So everybody pre-order that as well. Aaron and Paula have submitted contributions to the book, so you can read their thoughts as well. Paula, I know it's so difficult to just say, well, you know, like, what do you want to close with?
Well, first, thanks, Joy, for having me on. Thanks, Aaron, for being an advocate and for telling our story and for coming to Michigan, both of you, and for, you know, helping to get this out because it is important and it's just, you know, it's a living nightmare. I think it's inconceivable that he's still in prison for sure. And I think the other thing that I wanted to kind of hit on is, you know, something that personally hit me when I read about the story, because I was not from, you know, very familiar with the criminal justice system, is so many people are like, they just don't understand, you know, how this can happen and that something that's so blatantly obvious can't just be fixed. They think that it can be, you know, we'll just give him a new trial, or he must be a really bad person if he's still in there, or, you know, they come up with all of these reasons not to act or not to do anything, and they're kind of justifications. And I think a lot of people want to believe in the system,
Yeah.
and I think it makes them feel safer. And so when they do hear of a case like this, they just immediately think, well, there must be something wrong. And, if he has all of this evidence, and if he won these appeals, and if this happened, and if that happened, and his drug dealer was, or I'm sorry, his attorney was a drug dealer, and that was proven, well, then he should just get a new trial. But people don't understand how bad our appellate system is. And the appellate system, for those of you who haven't really thought about it before, is every single innocent person who has ever been exonerated lost every single one of their appeals.
Yep.
And they've usually had at least 10, 15, 20 of them. I know exonerated people, Marvin Cotton, Ken Nixon, and Larry Smith in Michigan alone, that had over, I think all of them had over a dozen appeals, and they lost every single one of them. And so that should say something about how bad the system is. These judges just rubber stamp deny the appeals when they come through because they don't want to undo some other judge's work. And I think we really need to scrutinize and pay attention to what's happening here and call out these bad state actors, because it's unacceptable. We can't have innocent people being locked away for decades. But to close, I guess I would just say, thank you, everybody, and for listening, for sharing. Please share this case. Please talk to people about this case. Please go on Governor Whitmer's Facebook, Instagram, everything, and ask why Temujin Kensu is still in prison. And just get involved. There's ways that you can help people that are imprisoned. There's a million things you can do, and there's a million groups and organizations that really need help. There's a lot of people that really could use some help in there. And I think of how blessed Temujin is. Over the years, he had somebody there, and he said that that's what's gotten him through all of these years, was good people who listened to him, who believed his story, who would write to him, who would talk to him. He, for years before JPay and an electronic tablet where you could copy and paste a message, you were handwriting things, and you were writing letters to Montel and Dr. Phil and all of these different talk show hosts. Now it's a bigger genre in true crime, and so it's a little bit better. But there's a lot of innocent people trapped in our prison systems, and they need an advocate. They're dying for an advocate, and it's just write to your state representatives, write to your governors, write to your AGs, get involved and help.
Absolutely. And I haven't said this publicly, but I'm going to, because I know like 99% of my viewers are Free Palestine. But I want people to know, as much as we praise Rashida Tlaib, she came out in 2022 with a public statement calling on Governor Whitmer to release Temujin. And I have been emailing her for weeks, and she has not responded. I want to clarify, I have met Rashida in person multiple times. I have Zoomed with her personally. She knows who I am. She is still not responding to me. So we need to hold people like this accountable too. Like, she's not getting a pass from me just because she's good on Palestine. So if you want to hit her up too and tweet, be respectful. We can't, don't be an asshole, be respectful, but ask, why did you stop talking about Temujin Kensu? Why? You literally said he was innocent. You literally said those words. And now you're MIA. So it's not just Governor Whitmer. She's a constituent of Whitmer. We need to hold them accountable as well. We could use her. She has a huge voice. She can rally so many people together. So please hit her up as well. There is a podcast coming out this month with our good friend Jason Uthry. It is called Inconceivable. It is the first full full podcast of Temujin. It's not just an episode, it's going to literally, actually, Jason told me he thinks it might be 30 episodes, which I can believe would happen on this case. So that's dropping this month. Definitely, the trailer's up. Definitely subscribe so you can get that ding when it comes out. And also my book, please pre-order, and it's printing next month, and I'm so excited about it. It includes transcript of when I met with Temujin a few weeks ago, from our meeting, and the reason I have transcript is because I have the only recording ever in existence from the prison when I met with him, because I'm finally, something good happened with my blindness. I was able to tell them that I was using it for using the recording for transcript, which I was. But then afterwards, I kind of realized I think I'm going to use the recording as well. So actually, you can hear some of the recording on Due Dissidents. Shout out to them. Katie Halper, she played another one. I was on with Bill Proctor last week. Jordan Chariton texted me about going on Status Quo about my book, so also watch out for that. So lots of good things, but spread the word about Temujin and his case, because the more people who know, the better, and the better chance we'll get him out. So thank you so much, you guys, for tuning in. Smash like, smash subscribe. Thank you, Matt. And Matt will be joining me tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, for this week's news. Thanks so much for watching, guys. And thank you so much, Aaron and Paula. You guys are amazing.